Hello and good morning, everyone, or maybe good afternoon, depending on where you're joining us from. My name's Rachel Browner, and I am the program coordinator for OneOp, specifically for our lifespan caregiving. It's my pleasure to welcome you to today's session on the ABCs of disability benefits, your guide to SSDI and SSI in 2024. It's crazy to think that we're in 2024 already. In case you're joining us for the first time, I'd like to give you just a brief tour of our webinar platform so you can find your way around. Hopefully, you're currently able to view the slides we're sharing. If you're unable to see them or if you have any difficulty throughout today's session, please reach out to us at contact@oneop.org if you need that tech support. And I greatly appreciate everyone that's already started posting in that chat. We look forward to having you join us in the chat pod today for conversations and questions. In case you're new, to embed that chat pod so you don't miss any links or conversations, simply place your cursor over the shared slides. You will then see kind of a toolbar pop up across the bottom of your screen. From there, just click that chat bubble icon. So when typing questions or comments, please be sure to select everyone from the response options drop-down menu so everyone's able to view them in the chat pod. If you haven't already started typing in the chat, it's just a way for us to get to know you. So if you can, let us know who you are, where you're joining us from, maybe the agency that you're with, or if you're a family caregiver, let us know that as well. Just makes this platform a little bit more personable. And note that the slides and resources are available for download on the event page for today's session. I'll be placing that link here shortly in the chat for you. We're going to be covering continuing education credit information at the end of the webinar, as well as certificates of attendance. So please stay tuned at the end if you're interested in those CE credits or certificate of attendance. Today's session is 90 minutes, so it is a little longer than our normal lifespan caregiving webinars. So it is going to be a little bit longer today to hopefully make enough time to get to everyone's questions. If we do have lots of questions that are coming through, which is a great problem to have, we may hold some of those questions for different spots throughout today's webinar, just so we can stay on time and that the presenter can get through her slides okay. Thank you for joining us as we continue our partnership with the Department of Defense and the Department of Agriculture to expand the readiness, knowledge networks of the professionals supporting our military service members and their families. I'd like to briefly introduce our presenter for today. Rhonda Romero is not new to our webinars that we provide for OneOp. She has in the last couple of years provided a yearly Social Security webinar for our professionals. And so we're so excited and thankful to have her back again. She's actually doing a two-part session. So if you really like today's Social Security webinar, she's coming back next month. So mark that on your calendar. We'll give you those dates at the end of today's session as well. But Ms. Ramiro began her career with Social Security Administration in 2001 as a supplemental security income claims representative. And in 2014, she became the public affairs specialist for New Mexico and part of West Texas. And Rhonda serves on SSA's National Alaska Native and American Indian Committee and the Dallas Regional Native American Workshop, or Work Group, excuse me. And Rhonda is a native of Santa Fe, New Mexico, where she currently resides. So at this time, without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and pass over the presenter reins to Ms. Romero. And Rhonda, it looks like you might be on mute still.
I apologize. I'm working from a teeny tiny screen today, but thank you so much, Rachel. I am so happy that I get to be a part of this every year, and so happy as I'm looking at the chat and seeing that, oh my gosh, so many different states are joining. And what I love is my job, as I've always said, is to dispel any information that a sister-in-law from years ago gave you at a birthday party about Social Security. So disability is so important, and it's one of the few programs that we offer. Of course, everybody knows about retirement, and I'll be doing a webinar on that next month. But disability and SSI are a big bear, as I call it, to learn. And so I'm going to give you general information, but it's solid information that you can use to help people file for benefits in your community, or just give them information and give them knowledge so it's not so scary for them when they're filing online or when they do make an appointment in the office to see somebody to file. Now, we have a specific definition of disability, and it's a person who cannot work due to a severe condition, and it has to last a year or more, or is expected to last a year or more, or result in death. Now, that doesn't mean that someone has to wait to file after a year of having their condition. It can be a diagnosis they get from a doctor, and this is something that is, expected to last a year. They don't have to wait that long to file. Now, it has to prevent them from doing substantial gainful employment, work that they did in the past, and any other type of work. So, for example, if somebody's always done construction, they hurt their back, but they're able to do desk work, they possibly may not be allowed because they can still do some sort of gainful activity, even though they can't do their previous job. Now, there are requirements when you file, and you don't have to worry about this when you file online or you're talking to the Social Security claims specialist, but there's two different earnings tests. Now, what this means is, just like car insurance, you have to have enough quarters to file for disability. So let's say somebody worked, the 10 year, everyone knows you have to pay in 40 quarters, 10 years of work for retirement, but maybe they stopped working 10 years ago, 11 years ago, and decide to file for disability now. Well, those quarters expire. So you have to be insured, we call it, the last 5 out of 10 years. Now, I know I'm going to give you a lot of information, and it's a lot to take in, but you can always go to our website. I do provide my email. Rachel gets a hold of me if people have questions, and I'm pretty good about answering back, but it is a lot of information. But this part of it is pretty important as far as SSDI. We love acronyms. So SSI and SSDI sound exactly alike, but they're very different. Remember, Social Security disability insurance is what you're paying your quarters in for. It's your money, you're paying into it just like retirement, and that's what your dollar amount will be based on. Now, you have to be current with those quarters. Like I said, if you wait too long to file, you retire, 11 years later you file, those quarters may expire. The last 5 out of 10 years have to be worked in certain ages. Now, let's say somebody is 24 years old. Well, we're not going to expect them to work since they were 14. So there's different allowances and leeway the younger you are when you become disabled. So like somebody that's 24, they just need a year and a half of work during the 3-year period before they became disabled. So just remember that. We're not going to require somebody that's 25 to work 10 years, the last 5 out of 10. We adjust it for age.
Rhonda, what if
Yes.
a condition prevents a young adult from working at all and they've never worked before because of their age, and now they're 22, the conditions become more severe and they're unable to work?
Well, then we wouldn't be looking into SSDI, we'd be looking at SSI for them to file. So supplemental security income is needs-based. It's not based on paying in those quarters, those FICA taxes. It's a benefit that's available if someone's disabled, if they've never worked. So, for example, children, a young adult that's never, worked because they've always been disabled, or even if it's somebody that's aged, um, maybe they didn't work enough quarters, they don't have enough, their Social Security disability insurance has run out. Well, then we look into SSI, which is the needs-based program. So our two programs are funded differently. So this 22-year-old would file under SSI. And that comes from the general funds of Congress. That's our tax dollars going in, your federal taxes. SSDI, that's your own money, your FICA taxes from your paycheck. So I always say I have these slides up and you can read and I can read, so I don't read the slides. I will give you information from the slides. Maybe I'll read a little bit, but this will be available to share, this PowerPoint. So like I mentioned, the younger you are, the less quarters you need. The older you are, the more you're going to need those recent work quarters to get on disability. So big question, when should someone apply for disability? As soon as they have it. As soon as they know this is something that's going to prevent them from working at a substantial level for a year, or it has been, maybe they've been working, but they've been having to take off of work a lot. They've taken leave, maybe their employer, they're getting paid for 40 hours, but the employer is maybe a family member or it's somebody they've worked for a long time. And that employer can explain like, okay, yeah, I know they're working over the allowable substantial gainful activity limit that Social Security has, but I've been letting them slack. That's to put it in, that's my proper term. I've been allowing them more rest periods. They are working at a lower level than they did before, but I'm still paying them this full hourly amount. So we can work with that. Now, have somebody file right away. If they're working over a substantial gainful activity amount, though, if they're physically going and getting that wage, let's say they're pushing through and they're doing it, there is a possibility of an informal denial. And what that means is we can't file your application now because you're working and earning too much. We can't even go and look at this disability part of it. And I will give you those dollar amounts as the slides progress. So what we do is we look at everything when you file for SSDI. We're going to slide into the SSI rules in a bit. We look at the years you've worked. We make sure that you have those quarters in. We also evaluate any current work activities like I just explained. We look into that. We always want to try to get you as much money as possible. So we look into, yeah, you had some work, but like I said, we may contact your employer, see if you were working at a lower amount, and also maybe you were just on leave. That's not going to count against somebody. If somebody's using sick or annual leave because they're disabled, even though you're getting that income for SSDI, SSI, it's going to be different. Then you can still file. What we do is we send these cases, we get everything together, ask you about your doctors, where you've been seen, where you've worked. It's a big application. Takes about an hour if we are talking to you. If you're doing it online, it probably takes a couple hours, but at least you can stop and go back to it. We send this to Disability Determination Services. Now, each of these places is state run. So your state has their own DDS. Like I said, we love our acronyms here at Social Security. It's our own little love language to everybody. And but the rules they follow are always the same. And also what's different with each state DDS is the average for claims getting processed. Depending on the state you live in, it could take longer. Like right now in New Mexico, it's probably about 6 to 9 months for an initial decision. I'm based out of Santa Fe, New Mexico. My DDS is in Albuquerque. Now, somebody in Florida, it can take up to a year because there's just more cases going on with their state disability determination services. As you can see, I've done this presentation for many years. I've been with the agency 22 years, so I get ahead of myself with the slides. What DDS does, they're the ones that compile all the information. They look at your work history. They look at what you're doing now. They look at your education and the disability, and they look at your age. That's why it takes so long. So they gather all that information and they're going to see, can this person continue to work at a substantial gainful activity amount? How is that decision made? They look at everything. They look at, are you working? Is the condition severe? Just everything I had mentioned before. And they also look at any other type of work. Can they, yeah, maybe they were an accountant before. They did very technical work, but can they do simple work? They look at everything.
Rhonda, will people get retroactive SSDI if it could take up to a year for a decision from
Yes,
DDS?
they definitely can. So with SSDI, what happens is there is a 5-month waiting period before somebody gets paid. So you may file in January. We have that 5-month waiting period before we can start paying you. So even if you got approved in March, we're not going to be able to start paying you till May or June. But if it does take a year, there will be, let's say it takes till January of the following year, we're going to owe you 7 months of retroactive benefits. And remember, with appeals, this counts also. So when you help someone file, your family member, you're filing, don't ever let that appeal time slide, because you want to keep this case going, because sometimes if you stop and start, you may lose money if somebody gets approved at the hearing level.
Would individuals not get disability if they had an upper management job and now can't do those duties, but could do something more simpler?
Well, it depends. Maybe they could do something simpler at above the substantial gainful activity level. Yes, that could happen. But there are some disabilities with Social Security that are, we call them compassionate allowances, presumptive disabilities, that they can get approved for right away. So, maybe they could possibly do it, a job, a lower level job, but maybe they can't do it for a year or more. Maybe they can only do it for a couple months. We look at everything. So there's a lot of maybes and what ifs with SSA disability. Like I said, they do take a while, but it's because they look at everything. And I mentioned appeals, keep that case going. Also keep it going because disabilities progress. Somebody may all of a sudden something else happens. Maybe there is a mental health disability that occurs because they're dealing with severe back pain and now they get anxiety and depression that maybe wasn't mentioned in the initial claim, but you're going to mention that in the appeal. That could even get them approved. Even age, something as slight as somebody turning a year older could get them approved because maybe it switches over to now they're an aged individual. Now, we always send a letter. If you're approved, we send a letter. If you're denied, we send a letter. And we send that letter with appeal times on it. So if somebody gets approved for SSDI, possibly their family can get paid off of that benefit. So let's say somebody's going to get $1,000. I use easy math for their SSDI. Well, their family could get up to $500 more a month off of their SSDI record. So that person may have 2 children. Well, those children are going to get $250 each on top of that benefit. It doesn't reduce the client's benefit. It adds on to it. And also the mom possibly could get benefits on it as a caretaker for those children. She's helping them. She could get extra money on it, or the dad even. So dependents do get paid off of that. Not the spouse at the time, just the minor children. But like I said, there are parents' benefits available. They used to be called mother's benefits. They still are, but it could be fathers if they're helping care for that child. Now, when people file, they do need to tell us if they have an outstanding warrant for their arrest, or they've been convicted of a crime, or they're violating parole or probation. Now, as you know, as social workers, people don't always tell us that. So if we find out later if somebody has an outstanding warrant for a felony warrant, not a misdemeanor, not a bench warrant, we can't approve them for benefits. We can't pay them for benefits if they violate their parole or probation, or they have outstanding warrants for their arrest. So we do check into that. They may not tell us at the beginning, but we find out later. So, can somebody work and receive benefits? Well, yes, they can. But the thing is, people don't want to work too much when they're filing for benefits with us because, first of all, that if they go over an amount, and I'm going to give you that substantial gainful activity amount. I apologize. I thought I had put it in these slides. Now, if they go over that amount while they're filing for benefits, while their application is pending, that could jeopardize their application, because what would happen is they would see that, oh, this person can do substantial gainful activity. They may not get approved. So for 2024, what we consider substantial is $1,550 a month. So if somebody is working, physically earning that amount or more, we're not going to look into the claim. They may be denied if we think they can earn more than that. Now, less than that, that's different. That's not considered substantial, so they could get approved. So let's say somebody's working and earning $1,000 gross income, they can still apply for SSDI. Now, SSI is different. It's going to change in a bit. But SSDI, they could still file and get approved and receive a benefit. Or let's say they haven't worked for a couple of years, they're on benefits, they could start working, and they have a 9-month trial work period. We allow them to work over that $1,550 and see if they can do it. See if they can actually do the work and get off benefits. Now, it changes when you get approved. So there's 2 substantial amounts. So when people are filing, if they go over $1,550, until that application is approved, we may not be able to approve them. Now, Once they start getting benefits, a trial work period month is $1,110. It changes. So if somebody goes over that for 9 months total when they're receiving disability, there's a possibility that that benefit is going to stop. You go over it a couple months, that's okay. But it's there so people can try to work and possibly get off benefits if they want to, or supplement their income, because not everyone's benefit is high. The average SSDI amount is about 40% of what you receive with wages. That's a computation. And it's similar to what someone would receive at their full retirement age. So if 67 is when they can get 100% of their Social Security that they paid in, that's what SSDI is going to equal.
Rhonda, we've had several questions come
Yes,
through, and if you're okay at this point, before
I
you get
am
into
awesome with it.
SSI, okay, great. We're going to go through them just kind of in the order that I've received them. Again, we'll go through these questions, and then we'll let Rhonda speak and go through some of her slides. And then if there's more questions, please note we're going to try and get to everyone and do our best as we can. So one of the questions: if an applicant is a military dependent, which state do they apply? The state they currently live in or their home of record state?
That is an awesome question. You apply in the state you currently live in.
Okay, thank you. This one's going to be a much more specific question. Can a 68-year-old who started to collect Social Security and Medicare and recently within the past few months resigned from their job due to having lupus with severe pain be eligible for SSDI?
So we do not consider anybody disabled over the age of 65. So if they are 65, we wouldn't be able to do a disability decision because they're receiving retirement already. Now, this is where it gets a little tricky. So maybe somebody is 66. They started taking a benefit at 65, but it's not their full benefit they could receive. What we'll do is we'll look into it. If they were disabled prior to 65 and their work was low enough, usually if somebody retires, they've lowered their work or stopped working altogether, then we could look at it. But in that case, a 68-year-old, it's a few years after when we consider disability. There could be a possibility. They'd have to go back, they'd have to look at work. Depending on when they file, it may not be much more money, because if they filed and they're getting their full benefit from Social Security retirement, SSDI may not pay them anymore. And with SSDI, once you're on for 24 months, you receive Medicare. Well, that individual's over 65, they're already receiving Medicare, so it may be tougher for them to file.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Going back to that waiting period, what's the reason for the 5-month waiting period? Is that a regulation? Is that a Social Security?
Yes, it is. It's a federal regulation they put into place that somebody must be disabled for 5 months before they receive. It's only with SSDI. SSI is quick once somebody gets approved. It takes effect the month after the application, but SSDI, and I don't know why they made that rule. I hate to say it. That is something I've never found the answer to. I don't know why it was done. But it is a shocker for people. I do admit. But if they have a lower income, and they may qualify for SSI to pay them during that period, though, before their Social Security kicks in. We always look at both programs, because even though we know this individual is going to get $1,600 in benefits on SSDI, they may be not receiving any income right now and have low resources, that we look into SSI to cover them during that 5-month waiting period and get them Medicaid. We always pay SSI first, then we pay them their SSDI. The SSI amount we pay is offset. And the only reason we do that is because we try to get them money during that 5-month waiting period. And we also want them to get Medicaid because of that 2-year Medicare waiting period before they get it. Because if they get Medicaid first from SSI, they switch over to SSDI. It's too much money, to continue the SSI. We switch them over. The state will keep them on Medicaid until their Medicare kicks in, possibly. So, like I said, this is so much information. Everything is on our website. But just so you know, I'm probably blowing up your brains right now. Your head hurts right now because of all the info. It takes us 2 years to learn our job. When somebody first gets hired, they're on a year probationary period with us, but really, it takes 2 years to get a grasp of it. So please, if you have questions, ask them. I do get to them. Rachel will email them. We do have time for questions. Or you can go to our website, ssa.gov. You just type it in and search your question and it will pop up. There's also, it's called the SSA Red Book. It's online. That is your manual to file. It tells you about each program. It tells you what gets approved. It tells you everything. It is what you need to look at. It's only available online because they don't print them because it changes often, but it's the SSA Red Book, and ssa.gov, you can get it. And it will go over everything I've gone and actually in greater detail about everything I've said.
Thanks, Rhonda.
Sure.
And Michelle went ahead and posted that SSA Red Book
Thank
link
you.
into the chat. So thank you, Michelle. This is a
You are
great way for
awesome.
us all coordinating together here. We're going to try and get to just 2 more questions really quickly and
Yes.
then keep on moving on, because I know there's lots of questions that are coming through and your comments are opening up more questions. We're going to try and get to 2 more questions, and then we're going to hold some more for a little bit until we get through Ms. Romero's slides. So 2 more questions. What funds, resources could be available to support an individual approved to kind of make ends meet, or those resources kind of while they're waiting for that approval?
So as far as Social Security, we don't pay anything until that disability decision is made. If it's a terminal case, we will pay SSI if they qualify for it right away while they finish up the case. But everyone should turn to their states. In New Mexico, it's called the Income Support Division. It's called different divisions. It's your state office that provides you Medicaid or food stamps. They have general assistance. It's not a lot. I think it's like, not even 300. It's probably $300 in New Mexico a month to an individual. Families, it's different. It's called TANF, Temporary Aid to Needy Families. They will pay that. Food stamps. So they turn to those state benefits while this federal one is getting that disability decision.
Great, thank you. And the last one, when you were referring to that 1550, is that gross or net?
It's gross. Anytime Social Security looks at your work, whether it's retirement, disability, we always look at the gross income. Unless, okay, now I'm going to lie here. If it's self-employment, though, we look at the net. Wages from an employer, we look at the gross. Self-employment, we look at the net income.
All right, thanks, Ms. Romero. I'll let you
Sure.
go ahead and keep going through some of your slides, and I'll hold
Okay.
some of these other questions for a little bit.
So SSI, supplemental security income. This money comes from different funds. It's not from your FICA taxes you paid in, it's from the general funds of Congress. So anytime we get a cost of living increase, SSI gets that bump also each year. Now, so Congress allots this money for individuals, like I mentioned earlier, like the example of a 22-year-old that didn't pay into Social Security disability insurance. Children, minor children can qualify for SSI. We do look at the income and resources of their parents, though, because it's a welfare-based benefit, needs-based. So we look at all the income that's coming into the house, all the resources. Now, in order to qualify, you have to be disabled or partially blind, or let's say somebody is 65 and older and they're only getting $300 a month from their retirement benefit. Well, if they're lower income, they meet that resource and income computation with us, they can get SSI to supplement their income. And anytime somebody gets SSI, even if they get $1 a month, they automatically qualify for their state's Medicaid program and they don't have to recertify for it, as long as they're getting that monthly SSI check. Now, same definition of disability like earlier. Someone that cannot work because of their medical condition, it has to last or is going to last at least a year or result in death. Same thing, it has to prevent them from substantial gainful activity, that $1,550 amount a month. Now for SSI, first, before we can go to a medical decision with DDS, with that state agency, we look at the income that's coming into the home. We look at wages, Social Security benefits. We look at pensions, and we look at your food and shelter. So we look at who you're living with, who's helping you with living expenses, what you own. We exclude your home if you're living in it, and we exclude one vehicle, regardless of value. Now, let's say somebody they have two vehicles, but they owe more than what they're worth. We're not going to count either of those vehicles. Now, SSI can change from state to state. So what that means is sometimes the state, if there is a higher cost of living, they may supplement it. So average basic SSI is $943 a month in all states, but your state may kick in a little bit more to help with cost of living. I don't know all those amounts, but states like California, in DC, they have a higher SSI amount because their state supplements it. Now, it's always the state that someone is physically living in. So they always have to report to us if they move. And that's also because their Medicaid changes. We have to switch over the Medicaid. Now, we have two types of income, earned and unearned. Very, very technical terms, and they're pretty easy. Earned, of course, you're physically going and earning those wages. You're self-employed. We don't count the full amount of those. So yes, I said earlier, we look at the gross amount, we look at the net for self-employment, but we're not going to count all of that against somebody. It averages to about 50% is what we're going to count towards your income. So easy math, I'm got $1,000. I make $1,000 a month from wages. It's under SGA, substantial gainful activity amount, I can file. So Social Security is going to count about $500 of that towards my income amount. So they still may qualify for SSI. Sorry about that. Unearned, you're looking at benefits like retirement, unemployment, somebody's giving you money each month. That's money that you're not earning. We're going to look at that dollar for dollar. Resources, your bank accounts. We look at your stocks, your bonds. We look at life insurance policies with a cash surrender value only. Now, if you've got a life insurance policy, but there's no cash surrender value, no money you can take out right now, we're not going to count that against you at all. Property other than where you live. So if you're living in your home, you own a lot next, 2 doors down, that's going to count. Maybe you're upside down on it. Well, then it won't count. Or this is another thing. Sometimes, let's say somebody owns property, but they're living with their significant other in the town next door. Well, we're going to count that house because you're not physically living in that house, so we can't exclude it. Living arrangements. We are so nosy when it comes to SSI because we have to make sure we're paying you the right amount. We look at if you're living in someone else's household, if you're living in an institution, maybe you're in a long-term care facility, you're only going to be eligible for $30 a month maximum of SSI. And the reason is because your food and shelter needs are being met. So SSI will only pay $30 a month towards your essentials, like your shampoos, stuff like that. Now, reporting responsibilities for SSI. So we need to know of any changes. If you're working, if somebody starts giving you money. Here in New Mexico, we have a lot of casinos and people win money on that. Well, we need to know the month they win that money because they're not going to be eligible for SSI if they win money over the amount that SSI is. So living arrangement status, if somebody gets married, if somebody moves in with somebody as a significant other, as somebody that we call it a holding out spouse, they're holding out to the community as a married couple. They've been living together for 10 years, but they didn't get married, but they have cars, together, they have bank accounts. We're going to look at the income of both people. So we need to know about that. We need to know if they split up because then we don't count the income of the significant other. So changes are very important because if somebody doesn't let us know of these changes, they're receiving SSI, it does land up in overpayments. Same thing as earlier. You can't get any type of Social Security benefit. If you have an outstanding warrant for your arrest, you're convicted of a crime, you violate your parole or probation. And with SSI, also, if you are in jail, if somebody is in jail, they don't get a check. And that is because their food and shelter needs are being met by the correctional facility that they're staying in. Now, children can get SSI. So that's somebody under age 18, or if they're under age 22 and they're regularly attending school. So let's say they're still in high school, but because of their disability, they can attend to age 22. We can look into SSI for them. Even if they're over 18, they would be considered an adult, but we could still look into SSI for them because they didn't pay in those quarters. And as an adult, though, we look at their own income and resources. So maybe someone is disabled. Let's say they have Down syndrome. So they would qualify for SSI under their disability, but because their parents make too much money, have too much assets, and we count the parents' income and resources when they're under 18, they're not going to qualify for SSI. Once they turn age 18, we look at their own income and resources. We don't look at the parents. They could qualify now. So of course, the child has to have a disability in order to receive SSI. And just like an adult, their condition has to last 12 months or more. Now, With a child, of course, we're not going to look at their work. We're not going to look at, work they can do before. So we're just looking at the disability and how it prevents them from functioning normally in their daily activities, like with school, with other children. They look into their functioning. Now, for the child, we look at the parent's income. We look at child support is counted as income. Only a third of it goes, though, towards counting it for SSI. If they're getting auxiliary benefits. So let's say they had a parent that passed away, their parent is on SSDI, they're getting $500 a month from that. That will reduce their SSI payment. Now, this deeming is what I was mentioning. The income of the parents deems down to the child that's applying if they're under age 18. Now, let's say the child is being raised by their grandparent, which is so common right now. That grandparent's income is not going to count against the child because the child is living with the grandparent. The grandparent is the legal guardian. We're not going to count that income of the grandparent. Now, if the grandparent adopts the child, their income could possibly be counted against the child for SSI purposes. But if the grandparent adopts the child, there is a chance that a portion of their retirement benefits, if they're receiving benefits, could start getting paid towards that child. So let's say someone's on SSI already. They qualified as a child, they're getting benefits, they turn age 18. What happens is we call it a continuing disability review. We have to look at them now as an adult. We have to look at, are they able to work and earn over that $1,550 a month now that they're a child? Now that they're an adult. Like I said earlier, they live with the parents. We're not going to count that income. But let's say they turn 18, they're on SSI, they still get approved as an adult. It's going to continue. Yes, we're not counting the income of the parents. So maybe there was a reduction because of the parents' income. There's not going to be now because of income. There may be a reduction if the child does not pay their fair share of the food and shelter amount. What does that mean? I'm giving you really good tips and tricks here. Not even a trick. This is all in the Red Book. If they pay their share of food and shelter, their SSI should go up to the full amount each month. If they're not paying their share, it could be reduced by a third because Social Security looks at, well, they're getting help from their parents. We can reduce the amount because they're getting that help. The parents not charging them for food and shelter. So how do people compute that? They look at the mortgage. They look at the electric bill, the gas bill, and the utility and the water bill, and they divide it by the amount of people in the household, regardless of age. Then that would be their fair share. You don't count cable, you don't count internet. So that's a little something if you're dealing with disabled individuals that are turning 18, still on SSI, you see that their amount is lower or they find out it's going to be lower. They pay the parents verify it, they pay their food and shelter, their SSI goes up to the full amount, and it also helps the parents out. Now, foster children. A disabled person transitioning out of foster care can file an SSI application. Now, even though they're still living in foster care, as long as the state does not have custody of them anymore, they can still file. If the state has custody of the child, or maybe a tribe or a reservation does, they're the ones that have to file with Social Security. So let's say state takes custody of a child. In New Mexico, it's called Children, Youth, and Families. The parent no longer has custody, physical custody of the child either. The parent can't apply for that child if they're disabled. Only the state agency can. Same with a grandparent. The grandparent gets legal guardianship of that child. The grandparent can file a benefit for that child for SSI if they're under 18. Homeless. So for SSI, if somebody is homeless, they can file for a benefit. They let us know they're homeless. We flag that claim to go through a little bit faster. Now, the reason is because we know people that are unhoused, they move around a lot. And so we try to get, because it's state DDS that does that decision, we try to make sure that they get it done as quickly as possible. So the individual, if they get scheduled for a consultative exam by us, they're going to still be in that state so they can attend it. Because if somebody misses their exam, they could be denied if we request an exam. Also, there are programs available for homeless individuals. It's called SOAR, SOAR. There are SOAR representatives in each state. The acronym is Systematic Outreach and Recovery. What that means, these caseworkers, they are certified in it. They help them apply. We have a relationship with them. They do so much legwork on this claim for us. They get together medical records, they write up medical summaries, they submit it to us, and the case gets determined a lot faster and it goes to the front of the line. So SAMHSA, SAMSA, if you go through them, look at their website, they're going to list SOAR providers, or there's SOAR Works, SOAR Works. They can also find providers in their state and town that will help them file this application if they're homeless. Now, a lot of the application is done online. Most people can file an online application. They have to be over 18 and younger than 65. They have to be a U.S. citizen, and if they've ever applied for SSI before, they can't file online because our system goes a little bit crazy. Sometimes they can, but their old record on the system and information talks to the new one online, and sometimes it doesn't allow it. Now, to file for SSI and SSDI online, you got to file for both. So maybe somebody knows, I've never worked enough for SSDI, I only want to file for SSI. Well, you can still start that application online. Just say yes to SSDI. They may get a denial right away because there's not enough quarters, but we're still going to pursue that SSI application. So have them just say yes and file for both online. Now, SSA.gov, sign up for an account, file online. Or someone can schedule an appointment with us. You can call the national number, or you can look online for your local office. They schedule the person in the town they live in at the closest Social Security office to where they physically are. We can do it over the phone. Now, the appointments are averaging from 2 weeks to 2 months booked out, depending on the office you live closest to. Now, once the application goes through, we get it. We may call your client or you, if you're helping them, for more information. If we notice something's not on there, we may even need to schedule the appointment on the phone. Yes, you applied for SSDI, but we need more information for SSI, so we got to call you. We send it to DDS. They make the medical decision. Now, if it's somebody that's a non-citizen, qualified aliens, permanent residents can apply for SSI and SSDI if they have enough quarters. Not a lot of people know this. If they have residency and if they have in those quarters, and depending on when they came into the country, they can file for SSI and SSDI. There's different types of qualified aliens. I'm not going to go through everything because I want to make sure we have lots of time for questions, because last year I believe we ran out of time. But just know that if you go online, you can see if you have a client that is a resident, they can possibly file. And this is also if they're over 65. This is not just disability. Maybe, they paid in enough quarters, but they're only getting 400 a month. They're lower income. They want to get up to that higher amount. They want the Medicaid. Then they're going to want to look into this. And like I said, for anybody that's over 65, if they're getting $900 a month and no other income from their retirement, or the spouse doesn't get much income, have them look into SSI, because they get paid $1 from the SSI program. They get Medicaid, and possibly their Medicare premium will be covered by the state. So that's another $174 in their pocket. And just in general, if you know anybody that is lower income, they're having a hard time, whether they're on disability or retirement, paying that Medicare premium, talk to your states. Like I said, mine's called Income Support Division. Sometimes it's Department of Health, Human Services Department. It depends what your state calls it. It's the state Medicaid office. They could qualify for a program that pays that Medicare premium for them, and they get that money back in their pocket, even if they're not eligible for SSI. Now, I go into a lot there with non-citizen, but like I said, this is all on our website. We do have programs once individuals start with SSI or SSDI. There's Ticket to Work. This is for somebody, they're getting disability benefits from SSI. They can get training and other services that will help them get back to work at no cost to them. They'll qualify for it. So once that agency decides, a state agency, we send them a letter. If they're approved, they get a letter. We tell them how much their payment's going to be, and we can even tell them, hey, we got to talk to you again for SSI. We want to update your information and get you paid right. Make sure we can pay you one first, get you the other. We look into everything. So we may do a review. Now, if they're denied, the letter's going to tell them why and how to appeal. Make sure they keep appealing that determination. There are ways with SSI that somebody can, where they don't have to get into a special needs trust. They can do an ABLE account, and it allows individuals with disabilities on SSI to save money in a tax advantaged savings account. They can save for college, they can save, for other stuff. And that, if it's in that ABLE account, it's not going to count against them as a resource. Now, ABLE accounts are great for, you have a parent that, or an adult, so whether they're a child or an adult, that parent can help and start saving for expenses that may come up. Just like a special needs trust, you're going to worry about, your adult child that's disabled. In the future, you can put money into this ABLE account, and it'll help save, it'll help with expenses, and it's not counted with the SSI as an asset or income. So please look into this if you have people that are already on SSI, the parent wants to save money, because on SSI, if an adult's on SSI, they can't have more than $2,000 dollars in resources, excluding their home under their name and their vehicle under their name. If they go over $2,000 in assets, they don't qualify for that month. So an ABLE account is a way for them to save more than $2,000 and kind of have a backup. Medicaid, Medicare and Medicaid, two different programs. Medicare is federal. That is the federal health insurance program. Like I said earlier, people get entitled to Medicare if they are 65 and older, or they've been on SSDI for 24 months. Medicaid is state run. Each state has their own Medicaid program. A representative payee, that's somebody that takes care of your benefit for you through us. We don't recognize power of attorney. So a representative payee, that's usually a parent or the guardian of a child that's under age 18. They take care of the money. They make sure food, clothing, and shelter needs are being met. They also answer letters that we send. They answer anything Social Security requests. They respond to us. The representative payee is who we talk to. For an adult, about 50% of people that are on benefits usually have a representative payee. If it's an adult, same thing, food, clothing, shelter. They help that individual with paperwork they receive from us. They can call us and make changes for the individual, get information. They're in charge of that check that the individual receives. Now, the person receiving the benefit as an adult, they have a choice on who they want to be their payee. So they can choose. They also, if somebody they feel is not managing their money right, maybe they tell us later, well, they never gave me any money for my food and shelter. They were only giving me $200 a month and my expenses are more than that. So they can switch that payee, but we have to approve it. We're not going to make anyone a payee that has a felony. We're not going to make anybody a payee with a misdemeanor of larceny, theft, or battery on a household member. So we do screen these individuals. If there is fraud involved, have somebody reach out to us. If they don't know how much they're not getting enough money, we need to know, because we take this very seriously and we report it to the Office of Investigator General with us. And, depending on the amount of money that the claimant is alleging they never saw, or if that individual never even knew they were on disability and someone else is a rep payee, we can look into all of that. You can choose who your rep payee is. If you're filing for retirement, your parents can designate somebody. Not everyone likes their kids. You can do an advanced designation when you file for retirement. You can make your best friend your payee in case anytime something happens to your capability, you're not able to manage your money, you can make sure the right person takes care of your check, and we don't have to look at the applications for it. Now, you don't have to be incapacitated, to have a payee. It's just incapable of managing your own money. If somebody is determined incapable by us, but by DDS, but you're the parent, you realize, well, yeah, they can manage their money, but with help from me, bring them in. We can take the parent office payee, make the individual their own payee. If a doctor signs off on it saying, yes, they're capable, but they need the help of their mom's going to be there, to help them, but they want access to their own money. So thank you. And now time for questions.
All right, I think this is where everyone's going to be getting excited. I've been holding some of these questions from several slides up, and so, Ms. Ramiro, there's going to be kind of a combination of SSDI and SSI questions mixed and mingled, and if you've answered or if you've gone through them in your slide deck, it might just be a refresher for some of those questions again as I bring them up. Okay, so Going back to an adult child who was disabled before age 22 and then they're going off their parents' record, can they be receiving SSDI or SSI?
Okay, so this is what happens. That that child is 22 and they are receiving SSI. They've been disabled. I just use Down syndrome, cerebral palsy as examples. They've been receiving benefits since prior to age 22. Let's say they're turning 24 and their parents get eligible for SSDI or retirement benefit. Let's say their parent files for retirement benefits. Well, what we may do is we're going to look in to the parents' amount because they are on benefits. They have filed for benefits. We had approved that child before age 22 or right at 22 for benefits on SSI. We're going to switch them over to receive some benefit off their parents. So it would be similar to if they were a minor. So there are benefits available for individuals that are determined disabled prior to age 22 off their parents' record. But this doesn't mean, let's say, the parent's only 40 years old, the child is 22, the parent has worked, but they're not receiving any type of benefit from Social Security. Well, the 22-year-old won't qualify for that off their parents' record, but there is a way they can, but that's only if the parent is receiving SSDI or retirement benefits.
Okay, this is going to be a military question here. Can you describe the difference between SSDI for civilians and those for active duty?
SSDI is the same for everybody. So it doesn't matter if you're a civilian or you're active duty. Now, the thing is, what they are going to look at is if that individual is working and getting paid on active duty more than 1,550 gross per month, they may not qualify to start an application. But it is looked at the same, both with the non-medical requirements and the medical requirements.
If you are on SSDI or SSI and are single and then get married, does your payment amount change based on the income of your spouse?
So for SSDI, we do not care about income from a spouse or your unearned income like retirement or a pension plan. Once you're on SSDI, income and resources don't affect your benefit. The only thing on SSDI once you're on that affects you is work. If you physically start going and working over the amounts I had mentioned earlier. SSI, yes. If you're married, your spouse works, it does affect that SSI payment, depending on how much they work. Or any type of income they receive, even if it's a pension or their assets.
All right, Ms. Romero, I have a very specific question
Okay.
regarding an individual. If I have a young lady who's interested in applying for SSDI or SSI due to having multiple health issues, she receives income to care for her child who is on the TA waiver and receives SSI. I've been told she receives a W-2 with wages, but her wages are not eligible for her Social Security and Medicare. Is this considered income or not?
So you're looking, it's kind of a two-part question. So that's going to be considered income because it's wages, but it's, we're going to only look at about 50% of that. They may be looking at her maybe as a contractor, because if the state isn't taking FICA taxes out, then it's not paying into Medicare or retirement benefits for her. So If she's disabled, she still should talk to us because she's probably earning less than that $1,550 a month. Because usually when they're paying for somebody to care for their child or another member of their family, it's very minimal. So definitely I would still have her call the office and set up an appointment or file online. They'll reach out to her.
All right, we have a specific military question here. Can you apply for SSDI and start the process in one state and then finish the process in another? For example, the client is a service member and due to his progressive illness was PCSing to be near family who are currently his caregivers. He also just received his medical board determination of 100% disability.
So excellent question. And I really apologize. In my new slides, I did not put this in. Big one. Anytime a service member is approved 100% with the VA for disability, please let us know immediately. It doesn't guarantee an approval with us, but it flags that case to go through faster. So I had mentioned homeless cases go to the top of the pile for people that are unhoused. Veterans, anybody that's approved with the VA, 100% total disability, their cases go through a lot faster. And that's only because whether it's an denial or approval, they'll get a decision faster because we interface with the VA and we can get all those records quickly. So that was an awesome question to ask. Now, what happens is, yes, you can start it in one state and then you move, but you got to call Social Security and give us your new address because if we set him up for a consultative exam and it's going to be in that other state, that could cause some problems. And we also like it to the decision to be in the state they're living in. Now, if he's just maybe temporarily with his family and he's planning on going back, he may not want to do that, it is up to him. But by temporarily, I mean like no more than a month or two.
Thank you. And I know someone asked this question in the chat. This webinar will be recorded. It is being recorded right now. And so if you missed anything or if you're confused about something that was covered, go ahead and watch that recording. Give us a couple of business days to get it posted, but it is going to be available for you to come back and rewatch or share with others that may be interested to receive CE credit or certificates. But moving on to some more questions. What are some of the resources, savings, checkings, etc., that provide a cap on SSI or SSDI that you could provide?
So, like I had mentioned earlier with SSI, anything more than $2,000 in assets can affect them. So I keep mentioning, we exclude the home they live in if they own it. We exclude a vehicle regardless of value. So you could have a mansion and own a Ferrari free and clear, but nothing else to your name, and you could possibly receive SSI if you get no other income. Now, there are some things that are excluded over $2,000, that won't count towards that. So I'm going to use some examples. Let's say somebody has $2,000 in the bank. $1,999 in the bank. No other assets. But they've saved money for their burial. They've put it in a savings account. It's $1,500. They are not going to touch it. That is specifically for the kids to, get to when they pass away. We can exclude that $1,500 that they have saved for burial. Now, if they ever take it out, then we got to count it as income, but that could be excluded. Now, that's why people have to be really careful. Sometimes I did SSI for 14 years before I became a public affairs specialist. So I love SSI. And I love to help the population that qualifies for SSI. So if you go to the Red Book, you're going to see some exclusions that happen in there that I maybe not be mentioning. Like I said, for burial, it could be excluded. Maybe somebody sold their house, they got some money, they have a time frame to put that money into another house or spend it down. Certain things are excluded, but you really have to be careful with those bank accounts between with individuals not exceeding over that $2,000. Income affects them too. Remember that. So they get any type of income from anywhere. Like I said, I use the casino a lot because that happens a lot in New Mexico. Somebody wins, they get the income. We find out, well, they're ineligible the month they got that income, but then maybe they saved it in their bank account for 5 months and it's over $2,000. Well, that could make them ineligible. But look into the ABLE accounts. That really helps if somebody is on SSI. SSDI, once you're on, we don't look at those assets. Don't worry about it for SSDI.
For the Red Book and Blue Book in the the estate planning, the ABLE account special needs trust, we provided some links on today's webinar event page for more information on those breakdowns for you.
Thank you. Blue Book is about work. So that's an amazing one. So thank you guys so much for doing that.
Rhonda, if family members are helping with basic support until an individual qualifies for SSI, then does that support disqualify the individual from SSI? And I may not be asking this question correctly. So if
That's
this
a great
individual,
question.
okay.
It really is a great question because of course we all have family and friends that will help us. Most people do. What happens with that is, so if you are an adult, so I'll use my son as an example, my 30-year-old. So let's say he becomes disabled and I am helping him with $2,000 a month. And I am putting that cash in his bank account or handing it to him. That's going to count. He will be ineligible for SSI if I am giving him $2,000 a month and there is no valid loan agreement that he's got to pay me back. That's going to mess things up for him. Now, if I am, so I'm going to use my 30-year-old in Santa Fe, it's $1,800 for a 1-bedroom apartment, and that's a deal. That's what he pays. If I am helping him with his food and shelter needs, but I am paying that rent directly to the landlord, and I am buying his food directly for him, there's a loan agreement, established, or then that may not count towards him. So it's a way of doing it. If you're paying those expenses directly with a loan agreement, he agrees to pay me back regardless of if he gets SSI. It can't be contingent on if he gets a benefit. It's got to be valid, even if he pays me $50 a month for the rest of his life. Now, if he's living with me and I'm providing food and shelter, then that changes it completely. That's not going to be counted as harshly against him. If there's no loan agreement, he's just living with me, I'm not going to charge him. Then we'll reduce the benefit by 1/3 when he gets SSI. If there is a loan agreement that, okay, I'm going to pay my mom once I get any type of income, the fair share of expenses, then there won't be a 1/3 reduction. So I just confused the heck out of you, but there are ways that it's not counted as harshly. Anytime somebody, a friend, a relative is giving them that cash amount, it's counted. So I hope that answered it and didn't confuse you more.
Will there be, as far as an individual that's receiving SSI or SSDI assistance, be affected if they're going to school and receiving scholarships?
No. So if it's a scholarship and it is for their books, their education, uh, their Pell Grant, that's excluded. Um, if they're getting that food and that shelterment, maybe they get a full scholarship, to the university. Uh, that's not going to be counted against them. Now, also, if somebody is working, let's say it's a student, they're working, let's say they're a student hire, work study program, that income is not counted as harshly. A lot of that is excluded if they're a full-time student. So that's a
Thank,
big one for yes.
thank you. Can the SSI process be done online or over the phone if the applicant's disability makes it difficult to leave home?
Of course it can. Please do it that way. Um, Online is so much quicker. You want to get that SSI application started right away because with SSI, each month you don't file, let's say they're just SSI only, that's a benefit you lose. So get on it as soon as possible. Someone can sit and help them, like you online. You can even sit there with them over the phone for their appointment, conference yourself in, say, they give us permission to talk to you. You're just going to sit there with them. Yes, please have them do that. You don't have to go into the office at all. Especially with some disabilities, there are a lot of schizophrenia clients. We have people with schizophrenia, PTSD. Our offices are noisy, and they get a little busy, and it's not very comfortable for individuals. So please, they are always able to do stuff online. They can mail stuff in if we need proofs. We will work with them.
Okay, can someone on SSDI apply for Medicaid? Can they get both, or do the Medicaid benefits affect their SSDI?
It will not affect them at all. So please, while they're waiting for their decision with us, definitely file for Medicaid. Absolutely. If they get approved for SSI, yes, that SSI, SSDI, it will qualify them possibly for Medicaid. It will, but please file for Medicaid in your state as soon as you can. They have different rules. Each state does. You can go to their website, their Medicaid website, and you can see those income requirements and resource requirements.
In Alaska and other states, Ms. Romero, teachers don't pay into Social Security. Will they qualify for any disability income?
No. And that's because they're paying into a private pension, and they possibly could have to file with their pension and not with us. Just like with retirement, they're not paying into Social Security because Social Security, their employer has contacted us and said, hey, we have a better program than your disability and retirement program. It's equal to or better, usually it's better, so they're not going to pay into it. So no, they wouldn't qualify for retirement or disability.
This is going to be a military specific question, or the next couple are actually. So the applicant has only 12 months left in Hawaii on orders. Should they wait to apply until they get to the next duty station?
No, have them file right away. If you see they're working below that $1,550 gross income a month, have them file where they are. Don't have them wait a year.
Can a retired veteran with 90% disability apply for SSDI?
So this can be tricky. Of course, they can file, but what happens with a lot of veterans is, so maybe they come back, they stop working because let's say they start getting enough from the VA. they wait 7 years, 10 years to file with us. Then we realize those quarters have expired. So yes, they can file. They can definitely file for disability, but we're going to look and make sure they have those quarters that I showed at the beginning, that they're insured. So always tell your veterans to file as soon as possible. Once they're under that $1,550 of wages, even if they're not approved by the VA, we look at stuff differently. The VA looks at service connection. We look at the work. Have them file right away. So please, yes, he can file.
Okay, and this may be just something very similar to this one that you just answered, but I want to make sure we get to it. Can the vet who's 100% disabled still work if they file for SSDI?
Now, yes, they can, because I know VA is different, you know, employability, but that's where it gets tricky. If they file for a benefit with us and they start working, it has to be under that substantial gainful activity level. It's tricky to file when they have a case pending because you risk it. Let's say say, oh yeah, they're medically disabled, but they went and worked over the amount for 3 months, so we can't approve them. We gotta look at everything again. So really make sure you look at those numbers, the substantial gainful work activity numbers. If they get approved with us for SSDI, then make sure it's under that 1110 amount a month before taxes. They can work over it. It does count if they do that 9 months at any time over. Even if they stop and start working, it could affect them.
Okay, and we're going to get to this final 2 or 3 questions that we have on here. If we did not get to your questions by any reason, if I overlooked it, or we missed it at the very end, I'm going to go ahead and type my email address in the chat. Reach out to me, send me a quick email with your questions, and I will make sure Rhonda or Ms. Ramiro gets that information. But we're going to go through a couple more questions, and then we're going to have to briefly go over continuing education credit hours for those that are interested, as well as certificates of completion real fast. But a couple more questions we're going to go through. This was a question from Vincent. Is BAH housing benefit excluded for dependent child of deceased service members receiving VA education benefits? Fry scholarship.
So, okay, so would they be receiving, okay, so the example is for SSI or SSDI, you mean? So for SSDI, none of that is going to count against adult. Now, a child, let's say they're eligible for SSI because the parent's income is, and like I said, that blue book is gonna, the red book, I'm sorry, is gonna show you all that, the income amount. Now, the housing benefit should be excluded because it's the BAH when they get housing off base. That shouldn't be counted against them because that's going towards the parents. VA dependent income tax-free included for SSI or SSDI. It's not going to count for SSDI if they're receiving as a dependent of a service member that's retired or disabled. Now for SSI, it can count. It is going to probably count depending on what it is. So we would have to look more into how they're receiving that benefit.
Okay. And are SSDI benefits always constant, or can they be increased based on need? For example, if an individual is living with parents, but now the parents are deceased and this individual now has to pay rent.
Yes, so like I was saying, my adult child's living with me. I wasn't charging him. He gets a lower SSI amount. Oh, I'm sorry, SSI. This is for SSI. If it's SSI, the benefits can change up and down. SSDI, always constant with those cost of living increases. Now, SSDI only changes if the individual, let's say they work too much and they get stopped, or we do a medical review and we see they're improved enough to go back to work. But otherwise, that benefit doesn't change wherever, who they live with, who they marry. That does not affect them at all with SSDI at all.
And the last one we're going to just briefly go over, Ms. Romero, is the question is just to be clear, if a person receives food and shelter, not money to purchase food and shelter, this gifting will be counted against them.
Now, it could be, yes, but if they have a loan agreement to pay back, that food and shelter amount, regardless of if they receive a benefit, it will not. But let's say if it's a minor child, we will never count that food and shelter against them. So just remember that under age 18, we are not going to ever count that for SSI.
All right, thank you.
And it's just a reduction in the benefit when they receive the benefit. But sometimes, we don't always count that. We don't always count the food. Somebody's on food stamps, or, we don't always get that nitpicky. But if it's more of, like I said, I used my son as an example. He moves in with me. He doesn't have to pay rent. Yeah, it will be a reduced benefit. But once let's say there's no loan agreement, he starts receiving SSI. This is for just SSI. And he starts paying his fair share. Well, then we can pop that benefit up to the full amount.
All right, thanks, Ms. Ramiro. We are at that top of the hour for the end of today's presentation, but briefly, I'm going to go over continuing education credits. We are providing several 1.5 CE credits or continuing education credits for providers that are on today if you're interested. Social work, LPC, LMFT, our case managers, our patient advocates, our financial counselors and planning educators, financial certifications for CPFCs, those certified family consumer sciences, certified personal and family finance educators, and those of you that are just here to get a certificate of attendance for joining to provide to your supervisors. We are providing all of those. And so Coral has so generously popped in the chat the link to the survey for today, or the evaluation website. So what you'll do is you'll go to our webpage where all of our webinar information is housed, all of those resources, that oneop.org/learn that we've been posting in today's chat throughout today. Go to that page, you're going to find resources, you're going to find a continuing education section. That continuing education section is going to have a nice purple button saying continuing education. You're going to click on that. What you're going to do is complete a survey. Let us know how we did today. Give us your feedback, good, bad, ugly, whatever you want to provide us. Complete that survey, and then you will be then prompted to identify which CE credit or certificate of attendance option you want. You have my contact information in the chat as well. It's rbrowner@ag.tamu.edu. Reach out to me. If we didn't answer your question, I greatly apologize if we've overlooked something, or if we just ran out of time. Go ahead and send me an email. We're going to try and get those answered for you. I'll get you in touch with Miss Romero. But also, Ms. Romero is coming back next month. So if you want to continue our conversation on Social Security, join us next month on March 6th. We're going to be talking about Social Security retirement and survivor benefits. And so please come back. We'd love to have you. Get connected with us. And I hope you all have a great rest of the week. Thanks for joining us. We appreciate you staying on for a longer session today. Reach out to us if you have any questions, though. Ms. Ramiro, thank you so much, as always. You are the best.
And I'm going to provide some pamphlets and stuff that Rachel can share with all of you that gets you more information. And then also contact a list of contact individuals that do my job in each of your states, because there's 1 to 3 of us in each state, and we can provide training more in depth to your agency.
Perfect. Okay, we are going to begin closing out today's session. Look forward to seeing you hopefully next month.
Yes. See you then, everyone.